Okay, we're in Shabbos. Yud Aleph. Aleph.
Yud Aleph Aleph. All right. One who throws an object on Shabbos from private domain to the public domain, or from the public domain to the private domain, is liable. However, one who throws an object from the private domain to another private domain, and the object passes through the Rishus Rabbim, the public domain between the two, Rabbi Akiva deems him liable for carrying into the public domain. The rabbis deem him exempt.
Okay, so this is a fundamental difference in Shita. We actually also saw this played out in Kalim of all places. Was it Kalim or Orlos? Actually, I think it was in Orlos. But basically, where Rabbi Akiva sees that if something is flying through the air, at every moment it's as if it is stationary. Okay.
Right.
So you can look at it in terms of that sort of physical equation that if you take a freeze frame at the moment, you put it down. You basically put it down, and therefore, even though it's going from a Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaRabim, nonetheless it's frozen in the air, and he mechayev a chatas for somebody who throws it, as long as it's below 10 tefachim. If it's above 10 tefachim, then the Rishus HaRabim only comes up to 10 tefachim. Above that is called a makom patur. Good morning, Eliezer.
Good morning. Good morning. Did I miss anything?
No, we actually just got started right now. We're starting to do the chazaras in Yud Aleph Aleph. I hope your little emergency is no longer an emergency.
No, we're doing okay. I think we're okay. I think.
Okay, no question.
Thank you. Thank you. Yud Aleph Daled.
Wait, so Riley's still doing Yud Aleph Aleph.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, camera.
We're at Yud Aleph Bet now, according to my
Did you finish?
translation.
Oh, right, you did finish it, right? Okay, so now you can do bet.
All right, Yud Aleph Bet. Yud Aleph Bet. Okay, thank you. Bet. That's Gimel. There were two wagons, one behind the other in a public domain. They would hand over the boards from one to the other, but they would not throw them. The bank of a
Hold on. You've jumped into the middle of the.
Oh, I'm in the middle. Okay. All right. In what manner? Two balconies, one opposite the other in a public domain, one who hands over or throws from one to the other is exempt. If both were in one row, one who hands over is liable, whereas one who throws in is exempt. For such was the work of the Levites. There were two wagons, one behind the other in a public domain. They would hand over the boards from one to the other, but they would not throw them. The bank of a cistern and a rock that are 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, one who takes an article from them or places an article upon them is liable. Less than these dimensions, he is exempt.
Okay. With regard to one who throws an object for amot in the public domain, if the object hits the wall above 10 tefachim from the ground, which is an exempt domain, it is as if one threw it into the air and he's exempt. If it hits the wall below 10 tefachim from the ground, it's as if he threw it and it landed on the ground.
Right, so this is if it sticks on the wall. So you're throwing something sticky and goes splat. So that's it's rested, and this again is the thing. Below 10 tefachim is Rishus HaRabim. Above that is no longer Rishus HaRabim.
Mm-hmm. So it's as if it landed on the ground. If it's under 10 tefachim.
Correct.
If one threw an object in the public domain intending for it to land within four amot, meaning he had no intention of violating the Torah prohibition of carrying, and the object rolled and went beyond 4 amot, he's exempt. However, if one threw an object with the intention of it landing beyond 4 amos, and the object rolled back within the 4, he's liable from when he originally threw the object. So, yeah.
Okay.
The rolling works one way, I guess.
It works both ways. If it rolls outwards, then you pater. If it rolls inwards, you'd be chayav anyway, because it all goes by what is the initial act. The initial act was that it landed. Rishus HaRabim, it landed after 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim. The fact that it rolled back afterwards doesn't now come and revert the chiyuv. Okay, Mishna Daled Hazorek Payam Arba Amos Pater. So if somebody throws something 4 amos in the sea, he's pater. Why? Because the sea is not a Rishus Harabim. The sea is called the Carmelis. It's we treat it as a Rishus Harabim midrabanan. Okay, and we don't allow carrying in the Carmelis midrabanan. However, but nonetheless, he's not chayav for doing it. If now what happens? Okay, so we know that the sea is a Carmelis. What about if you have a big puddle in the middle of the Rishus Harabim? Okay, so you have a big puddle, Rishus Harabim Mahaleches bo, and people are walking through it in the Rishus Harabim. Hazorek lesocha arba amos chayav. If somebody throws something 4 amos inside that, then he's still chayav because the puddle is something that the people are walking through. Now, even if people would prefer not to walk through the puddle, but if you have a big crash of people and people, and there's nowhere else to go, then people will go through it. But this is only as long as it's not 10 tefachim deep. 10 tefachim deep is starting to get a little bit much for the rabbim to get into, right? And that's the next thing that the Mishnah says. Kama hu rikak mayim is what's this puddle? Pachos me'asrat tefachim must be shallower than 10 tefachim. If it's deeper than 10 tefachim, then it's again a Carmelis because that's too much for the rabbim to walk through. Rikak mayim rishus rabbim maleches bo. If you have a puddle of water which people walk through, hazorik b'socha arba amos chayav. So the Gemara explains over here why is the Mishnah going back on saying the same thing again? This is exactly what it said at the beginning of the Mishnah. So why is it repeating it? In order to teach us 2 things. Okay. So one says, anything that if it's 10 tvachim deep, even if it's not 4 amos wide. Normally we say 4 amos is the requirement for something to be a significant domain. Okay. Because here people don't try to cross through it. They'll walk around it. Nonetheless, its din is like a Rishus Harabim, even though it is small, and even though something is small, right? It's still considered Rishus Harabim. Okay. And second point that it makes is that any puddle that the Rishus Harabim goes through, even though people only go through it like under pressure, people won't try and walk through the puddle. But if there's, as I said, if there's a large crowd of people pushing you through, then you'll walk through it. Okay. Nonetheless, the din is like a Rishus Harabim, and that's really why it's coming to why the Mishnah repeats itself to make these 2 points, that any puddle, even if it's too small, and even if it's something that people would normally walk around, but here, people will only go through it as b'shas adachak. Nonetheless, it's called the Rishus Harabim. Okay. Mishnah Hey, Hazorek min hayam leyabasha umin hayabasha leyam. So if somebody's in the sea and throws onto the land, or throws from the land into the sea, umin hayam lesfina, or from the sea onto a ship, or from the ship into the sea, umin asfina lechaverto, even from one ship to another ship over the sea, pater. This is all pater. Okay, as we mentioned above, that the issue of carrying in a Carmelis is only derabanan. So there's no chiyuv d'oraisa. You only bring a chatas if you're over on a d'oraisa. Now, what happens? Sfinos kashuras ovazo. What happens if you have 2 ships that are moored together? Okay, metaltalin mizolazo. So you can make an eruv chatzeris around the 2 ships. So even though each ship would normally just be a rishus by itself, and we have a din that you're not allowed to carry from one rishus yachid to another, just in order to prevent people from accidentally carrying through a Rishus Harabim. But we have the dinim of eruvin. So if you make basically an eruv chatzeres between the 2 ships that are tied together, you're allowed to carry between them. Okay. Im einan kashuras, however, if they're not actually tied together, afal pishu mukafos, even though you put some sort of rope around them, that's something that would serve as a boundary for an eruv. If they're not actually moored together, tied in a fixed place, then the eruv is ineffective. Okay. Mishnah Vav Hazorek v'nizkala acha sheyatz samiyado. So somebody throws something and then says, "Oh, it's Shabbos." Okay, suddenly remembers before it lands. Okay, or kelata acher, or he threw it and somebody else caught it, or kelata kelev, or a dog jumped up and caught it, or shenisrefa, or somebody was standing there with a flaming arrow and shot it and it spontaneously exploded in the air. In all of these cases, he's pater. Why? Because you need to complete the beginning and the end have to be done by one person with that one kavana. So as we saw in the first Mishna of the Masechta, where you have the guy standing inside, the guy standing outside. If the one reaches out and puts it in the other one's, and the other one takes it out of his hand, there's two people completing one action, and there you pater. So the same thing. If somebody else catches it, or even if a dog catches it, or even if if his kavana changes and he forgot it was Shabbos before, and now he suddenly remembers it's Shabbos. So now in all of these cases, he's pater. Zarak lasos chabura. Similarly, if we forget about the din of hotzah, now let's talk about the chiyuv of chabura, of making a wound. Okay, that's also going to be a melacha min Torah, lasos chabura. Let's see what he says. Chabura it's a tolda of shochet, by the way. So shochet is killing the animal, but letting the blood for whatever reason, as long as it's a productive purpose. Even if it's your enemy and you want to make a wound on him, that's also a productive thing. Okay, somebody you're angry with and you wanted to make a wound, so he throws a rock, hoping to injure the other guy. Bain ba'adam, bain ba'bahema, whether it's a person or an animal, you'd be chayav for the same thing. Nizkar ad shilona says chabura, and he says, "Oh my gosh, it's Shabbos." So as he throws it, before it actually finds its mark, he's pater. Ze'aklal. So your general rule is kol chai v'chataos, in any situation of being chai v'chatas for Shabbos, einan chayavin ad shedehe techilasan v'sofan shkaga. The only time you can be chai v'chatas is if the beginning and the end are shogeg. Okay. In other words, it was carelessness. He forgot it was Shabbos. He forgot that this malacha was asur, whatever it is. Okay. Techilasan shkaga v'sofan zadon. Even if the beginning was careless and the end was deliberate, where he says, yes, it's now also. So let's say he throws the stone and he remembers suddenly that it's Shabbos, and he says, you know what? I'm happy that it's Shabbos because I'm so angry that I also want to break Shabbos at the same time. So I get to wound him and I get to break Shabbos. Now, remember the chatas is only for somebody who does something b'shogeg. If somebody does something b'mezid, a chatas is not going to be a kapara for him. So you don't tell somebody to bring a chatas if it's not going to be a kapara. So if somebody was over on chas v'shalom, he violated Shabbos b'mezid, he does not bring a korban chatas. Right? He's over and he's now chayav kares. Oh, have I lost you? No, are you still there? Okay, I just saw everyone freezing for a second. Okay, so even in the case where half of it was shogeg and half of it was mazid, he's still pater from the korban because the korban's too good for him. Okay, it's or in vice versa. If he started out with mazid and finished with a shogeg, he's pater. It has to be both parts of the action. From beginning to end, it has to be b'shogeg. Okay. Yeah, Zayin Daled.
Zayin Daled. The Mishnah lists, okay. One who carries out straw in a measure equivalent to a cow's mouthful is liable. The measure for liability for etza is equivalent to a camel's mouthful, which I guess is a coarser type of straw.
Mm-hmm.
The amount for liability of ears of grain is equivalent to a lamb's mouthful. The amount for liability of grass is equivalent to a goat's mouthful, which is smaller than a lamb. The measure for liability of garlic leaves and onion leaves, if they are moist and fit for human consumption, it's equivalent to a dried fig bulk, which my note says is the standard amount for human food. If the garlic leaves and onion leaves are dry, the measure for liability is equivalent to a goat's mouthful. And none of these substances join together with one another to constitute a measure for liability because they are not equal in their measures. One who carries out a measure of food is fit for human a measure of food fit for human consumption is equivalent to a dried fig bulk. Sorry, I'm getting confused with my commentary here. One who carries out a measure of food fit for human consumption equivalent to a dried fig bulk into a domain where carrying is prohibited on Shabbos is liable. And all these foods do join together with one another because they are equal in their measure. The amount is calculated without their shells, without their seeds, without their shells and their seeds and their stems and their bran and their coarse bran. Rabbi Yehuda says none of the shells are calculated except for the shells of lentils, because when they're cooked and eaten with them.
You have coarse bran?
Yeah, most time it's
Coarse
considered.
bran and fine bran. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Coarse bran. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. All right, that's it.
Yeah, you got it. Yes, Aleph.
One who takes out wine is liable if he takes out enough for mixing a cup. Milk, enough for a swallow. Honey, enough to apply to a sore. Oil, enough to anoint a small limb. And water, enough to rub on an eye plaster. For all other liquids, one is liable for a quarter log, or for all wastewater for a quarter log. Reb Shimon says for all of them, one is liable for a quarter log, and they did not state all of these measurements, except for those who store them.
Okay. And base. One who carries out a rope is liable for a measure equivalent to that which is used to form an ear-shaped handle for a basket. The measure for reed grass is equivalent to that which is used to make a loop for hanging a sifter or a sieve. Rabbi Yehuda says the measure for liability is equivalent to that which is used to take the measure of a shoe for a child. The measure for paper is equivalent to that which is used to write a tax receipt. And one who carries out a tax receipt itself on Shabbos is liable. The measure for carrying out paper that has the writing erased and which can no longer be used for writing is equivalent to that which is used to wrap around a small jar of perfume.
Right. Okay. Orla. Gimel base.
If one dyes the length of a sit with husk of ola and wove it into a garment, and it is not known which it is, Reb Meir says the garment must be burned. But the Chachamim say it is voided 1 in 200.
Okay. If one wove thread the whole length of a sit from the wool of a first-born animal into a garment, the garment must be burned. If from the hair of a Nazir or the firstborn of a donkey into sackcloth, the sackcloth must be burned. And if even the smallest amount of wool or hair of consecrated animals, that which is woven into, is consecrated.
A dish cooked with shells of ola must be burned. If it became mixed up with others, it becomes void, 1 in 200.
Okay. That's where the shells are used as the fuel. So it's not even a taste, it's the benefit that we're talking about. Oil is aser b'hana. Okay. Shvius Yud Gimel.
A prose bowl is not canceled. This is one of the measures which Hillel the elder instituted. When he saw that people refrained from lending to one another and thus violated what is written in the Torah, beware that there not be abased through thought in your heart. Hillel instituted the prose bowl.
This is the form of the prose bowl. I turn over to you, so-and-so, judges of such and such place, that any debt that I may have outstanding, I shall collect when I desire, and the judges sign below or the witness.
And a predated prose bowl is valid, but a post-dated one is invalid. Predated bills of indebtedness are invalid, but post-dated ones are valid. If one person borrows from 5, he must write a prose bowl for each one. If 5 persons borrows from one, he need write only one for all.
Okay. Taros. By the way, did you get the bit about the post-dating and the predating? Why a prosbul, why a predated prosbul is more valid than a post-dated one, because the prosbul only works on debts that are prior to the date of the prosbul. So if you make your date earlier, you're weakening your claim.
Right.
Whereas with a shtar chov, if you predate the shtar chov, you're giving yourself an unfair advantage vis-a-vis other creditors, because whoever's got the earlier debt has the first dibs on the assets.
It also has something to do with the date. If there's a new king, right? If there's a
That's just an anchor for when the date is.
right.
But just in terms of the validity of the document, your document should have today's date on it. But if you predate it, if you predate the prosbul, okay, not a biggie. That just means that you've weakened your claim to people that you lent to in between that date and now. But if it's a shtar chov, that's not fair. Now that invalidates the whole shtar. But if you post date a shtar chov, then you've just weakened your claim. So that's actually acceptable. Okay. Taurus Daled Zion.
There are uncertainties that the Kakamas rule tahor. An uncertainty regarding drawing water in a mikvah, an uncertainty of tuma floating on the surface of water, an uncertainty of tuma concerning beverages with regard to acquiring tuma. The uncertainty is deemed tameh. Whereas with regard to conveying tuma, it is deemed tahor. An uncertainty concerning tuma of hands with regard to acquiring tuma is conveying tuma, and to becoming tahor is deemed tahor. An uncertainty in a public domain, an uncertainty concerning rabbinical edicts, and an uncertainty pertaining to kulin, an uncertainty concerning shiratzim, and an uncertainty concerning a fiction of tzras, an uncertainty concerning naziris, and an uncertainty concerning firstborns, and an uncertainty concerning sacrificial offerings.
Okay, so now hold your questions, because the Mishnah is going to deal with these cases.
Okay. A doubt concerning an object of uncleanliness that floated upon the water, quote, it is clean, whether the water was in a vessel or in the ground. Rabbi Shimon says, if in a vessel, he is deemed unclean, but if in the ground, it's deemed clean. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the doubt arose when the man went down into the water, he is deemed unclean, but if when he came up, he is deemed clean. Rabbi Yossi says, even if there is only enough room for a man and the uncleanliness, the former remains clean.
And an uncertainty concerning beverages with regard to conveying tuma is rule tahor. How so? If there was the staff in one hand.
Wait, sorry. Israel Tameh. I've got Tameh in here.
Tameh.
Well, I think I skipped the page. I'm sorry. Sure. Yeah, I skipped. An uncertainty of tuma involving beverages with regard to acquiring tuma is deemed tameh. How so? If a tameh person stretches his leg among tahor beverages and it is uncertain whether he touched the beverage or did not touch them, the uncertainty is ruled tameh. If there was a tameh loaf in one's hand and he threw it among tahor beverages and it is uncertain whether the loaf touched the beverage or did not touch them, the certainty is ruled tameh. And an uncertainty concerning beverages with regard to conveying tuma is ruled tahor. How so? If there was a staff in one's hand and on its tip there was a tameh beverage and he threw it among tahor loaves, and it is uncertain whether the liquid touched the loaves or did not touch them, the uncertainty is ruled tahor. Okay.
Right. Menachos. Hey, David.
There you go. He is liable for the oil by itself and on the frankincense by itself. If he placed oil upon it, he has invalidated it. If he added frankincense, he should remove it. If he placed oil on its remainder, he does not transgress a prohibition. If he placed a vessel upon a vessel, it does not invalidate it.
Sorry, I'm a little lost. You go ahead and take the next one while I find my place.
This is Cat Hay. There are mincha offerings that require bringing near but do not require waving, waving but not bringing near, bringing near and waving, neither waving nor bringing near. The following require bringing near but do not require waving: the mincha offering of fine flour, the machzavis, the machsheses, the chalas, the rechikin, the mincha offering of kohanim, and the mincha offering of the anointed kohen, the mincha offering of Gentiles, the mincha offering of women, and the sinners' mincha offering. Reb Shimon says the mincha offering of kohanim and the mincha offering of the anointed kohen do not require being brought near, because they do not require kamitza, and anything which does not require kamitza does not require being brought near.
Okay. And we're in Menachos. What's the parak in Mishnah?
Hey, Vav.
Hey, Vav. Okay. Dad. Hey, Vav. These are the items that require waving and do not require bringing near the altar. The log of oil that accompanied the guilt offering of somebody recovered from tsaras, I guess. It says leper, but I think those are
Correct.
different things. And his guilt offering itself, as it's written, and the priest shall take one of the lambs and sacrifice it for a guilt offering and the log of oil and wave them for a wave offering before Shem. And the first fruits in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and the sacrificial portions of the peace offering of an individual and their breast and thigh. My commentary brings a quote from a source for that. Both to men and to women by male Jews and not by others. Gemara will explain. In addition, the 2 loaves and the accompanying peace offering of 2 lambs brought on Shavuos also do not require bringing near, but do require waving. How does one perform this waving? He places the 2 loaves on top of the 2 lambs and places his 2 hands below the loaves and the lambs, extends the offerings to each of the 4 directions and brings them back, then raises and lowers them as it stated in regard to waving of the ram at the inauguration of the priests, which is waved and which is heaved up. My commentary says, i.e. waved back and forth and waved up and down. Waving was able to be performed to the east of the altar, but the bringing near of meal offerings had to be done to the west. Also, with regard to all meal offerings, the waving precedes the actions of bringing near. The Omer meal offering and the meal offering of jealousy brought by Sota requires both bringing near and waving. The meal offering of the Omer requires waving. Okay. Cut through my commentary here. The showbread and the meal offering brought with libations require neither bringing near nor waving. So, got that?
Yeah, got it. Sure. Nadarim Chespeis.
Nadarim. Until Pesach. It is forbidden until Pesach. Pesach arrives. Until it is Pesach. It is forbidden until Pesach ends. Until before Pesach. Red Meir says it's forbidden until Pesach arrives. If Yossi says it is forbidden until Pesach ends.
Okay. One takes a vow that something's forbidden until the grain harvest, or until the grape harvest, or until the olive harvest. It's forbidden to him only until the arrival of that season. This is the principle. With regard to any occasion whose time is fixed, and one said until it arrives, it's forbidden to him until the specific occasion arrives. If he said until it will be, it's forbidden to him until the specified occasion ends. And with regard to any occasion whose time is not fixed, whether he said until it will be or until it arrives, it's forbidden to him only until the specific occasion arrives.
Until the fig picking, or until it is the fig picking, it is forbidden until the people begin to bring in the figs in baskets. Until the fig picking passes, it is forbidden until the mats are folded up. Until the harvest is forbidden until the people begin to gather in the wheat harvest, not the barley harvest. Everything is according to the place of its neder. If he was in the mountain, the neder refers to the harvest. In the mountains, if he was in the valley, it refers to the harvest in the valley.
Gentlemen.
Talk to you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank
Have
you.
a
For asking,
wonderful week. It's a shame. We shall see you tomorrow.
thank you for asking about my little emergency, but everything was okay, so that was good. So Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
Okay, everyone have a great day. Enjoy.
Okay.
See you.
Cheers. Have a good day.
Bye.